Hello and welcome to Module 3, Section P of the Better with Less course about hobbies and entertainment clutter. This is a common area of frustration for people who want to declutter. They want a clutter-free and simple home, but they don't want to let go of the hobbies and entertainment that mean so much to them and make them who they are. And the good news is you don't have to. I'm going to walk you through ways that you can optimize and streamline whatever type of hobby clutter that you have, giving some common suggestions and ways that you can make it work for you and your space. So let's jump in. All right, let's tackle hobbies and entertainment. To begin, we will all have different types of hobby or entertainment clutter, but as far as some general principles that you can apply to any type of clutter, overall, the goal is to simplify your hobby clutter to make life easier and to be able to celebrate your favorite items. Keep the best, declutter the rest kind of concept. And there are 4 different approaches we can think about when we are going through these generally. We can think about use. When was the last time we used each item? Do we anticipate using it again? If so, when? If an item is not useful anymore, let it go. We can also think about reducing the overall amount we have. Can you cut down a certain number or percentage of your items from this category? For example, if you have 20 of something, whatever type of hobby or entertainment item that is, could you reduce that to 15 or to 10? And in doing so, you would dramatically reduce the volume of these items. You can also try the test it out approach where you set things aside for a certain period of time to see if you miss them. And if not, then you can let go of those items. And I think finally with hobby and entertainment related items, the concept of paying it forward is really helpful. With these items, they're often fun and meaningful items that can be valued by someone else. So if maybe you're not using an item, would there be someone who could get more value out of this? If so, that could help motivate us to let go of it. But these are general principles. Let's get into specific types of clutter. First up, books. Definitely something that people have higher quantities of than they may need, and they may want to declutter that. I find it helpful to sort books into 2 piles, what you have read and what you haven't read. If you have read the book, would you read it again? Is it one of your most beloved books that you definitely want to keep forever and showcase? If the answer is yes to those questions, feel free to put them back on the shelf or wherever you're storing them. If you have not yet read it, ask yourself if you are actually going to read it and really visualize when this will happen. Would it be the next year? If the answer is yes for these questions, you can also put those books back. And then for any of the remaining books, you can consider selling them, gifting them, or donating them, as it is not likely you will be reading them, or if you have read it, you don't intend to read it again. If you don't plan on ever returning to it, there's really no point in holding on to it. It can't actually keep doing good work if you keep it at home to yourself instead of letting it out there in the world. For movies and TV, we can follow a very similar approach, but first, an easy thing to do is to see what types of maybe obsolete technology you no longer have the correct equipment to watch. VHS tapes, I'm looking at you. If you've got any of those and you don't have a VCR or aren't using it, that should be a no-brainer, as well as any other type of media that you no longer are able to play. You can once again sort out the things you have watched and what you haven't watched. Ask yourself if you plan on watching that again or if it's one of your most beloved movie, TV series, etc. If you haven't watched it, reflect about when you will actually get around to watching that and see if that makes sense. Fortunately, media can be a bit more efficient than reading, since you might be able to watch a movie or a show even in one night. So maybe you put these to the test and actually sit down to commit to watching them, and then maybe you can make a more informed decision. But for any shows or movies or related items that you do not anticipate watching in the next year or rewatching ever, those definitely can be let go of. Moving on to games. When we're talking about games, this could be board games, card games, video games, really any type of game. Here we can divide games up by type, and oftentimes there's similarities and sometimes even multiple versions of the same game. That was a really genius business decision of some of these companies to create all these specialty versions of the same game and encourage people to purchase multiple of these games. So if you've got multiple versions, why not consider decluttering the ones that aren't your favorite? Keep the best one and then let go of the others, or other versions of the game that you're not playing. For example, if you've got multiple versions of the game Monopoly, do you actually need those other versions? How about just keep your favorite one? You can go through each game using some of the following questions. When did you last play this game? Last year? Will you play it next year? If the answer is no, you can get rid of it. Is the game missing parts, or are some parts no longer relevant or useful? If this is the case, consider getting rid of it, especially if it's not a game you were really choosing anyway. Another question is, who would you play this game with? Is it realistic that you'll be playing this game with this person again? Obviously, this depends upon your own circumstances as well as the type of game. But if it is something that's more of a past phase and you don't anticipate playing it again, then maybe you'd be able to let go of that game as well. And donate or gift any of these games that you do not wish to keep. I think they can be great re-gifted options, and again, fun things to pay forward if you're not going to be playing them yourself. Next up, for craft items, let's inventory your current craft items and divide them into piles of your past, present, and future crafting items. This is based upon when you've used them. If you have used them in the past, put them in the past pile. If you are currently using them for projects you're currently in the midst of, those will go in the present pile. And if you plan on using them in the future, in future projects, that can go in the future pile. For past items, will you ever return to these supplies or this project? And if you do, would you actually use these supplies, or would you be more likely to get new supplies or supplies that are more relevant to that specific project? If you might be getting new supplies or not even returning to the project at all, let's declutter those extra supplies. For present items, is there anything that you aren't using with your current projects? Do you have any just-in-case items, such as duplicate materials or scraps, that you're holding on to just because you have them, but maybe you don't really like them? Sometimes with these sorts of projects, we keep everything just in case, but the items we're keeping, we didn't use them for a reason. Maybe they're not as good as the others. Maybe it was a variety pack and some of it was our least favorite color that was included. Obviously, it will depend on what type of craft supplies you have, but let's move beyond the just-in-case elements here and keep those favorites. For future, when do you anticipate using these items? Why have you not started this project so far? If you don't have a clear start date in mind, or you don't know when you would actually get going on this project, will you ever get to it? If you can't identify a clear date, then maybe you can let go of that as well. And with craft items in particular, there are many amazing places you can donate. Of course, your local donation centers are a great option, but also schools and their art department, different women's centers, senior centers, and other places like that could definitely benefit from these extra supplies. Next up, let's talk about technology. We'll continue using this past and present idea with the technology and sort it into those two piles. In the past pile, think about technology of the past. Out of these items that you had in your past, which items are still usable? Are any of them obsolete? If they are still usable, would you actually use them? If you've got something that isn't usable or you don't intend to ever use again, let's sell those or responsibly recycle these materials. And depending on what you have, you can look that up in your area to see what sort of options are available. Many stores offer recycling programs for these different devices. You can also include any chargers or cords that accompany these devices in your work. In the present pile, these are devices that you do use maybe sometimes or that do still work, but is there a reason you're not choosing certain items? Is it still working, but technically you have a new preference of something you like better? Would some devices take the place of another device? If this is the case, consider keeping the best one and let go of the others. Of course, before you are getting rid of any sort of device, make sure that all of the data or personal information from each device is wiped before letting that go. Moving on to sports and fitness, let's reflect about your current health or fitness goals. In this situation, for whatever goals you have, what pieces of fitness equipment will help you reach those goals that you currently have? If you've got some of this equipment, let's keep these in the most accessible place so we are more encouraged to commit to this lifestyle. For other items that you don't intend on using to help you meet your fitness goals, you could consider decluttering them all, of course, or ask some questions. Have you used this in the past year, or do you envision using it again in the future? Do you have feelings of guilt connected to this item? Maybe you made an expensive purchase and felt guilty because you didn't get your money's worth out of it. You thought that this home gym was going to be really helpful for you, but you never used it. The treadmill has become more of a storage tool than a workout tool. Guilt has no place in a vibrant lifestyle, and as difficult as it might be to come to terms with the fact that you didn't use an item like you thought you did, letting it stay in your space, if you're not going to actually use it for fitness purposes, is not going to make it better. Let's take action, maybe see if you can sell it or find an alternative option, get it out of there, have a fresh start. And any phases of equipment that are from a past phase of life that you won't really return to could also be things you let go of. As we continue to get older, we may find that our own fitness preferences change, and something we used to do might be a bit too high impact compared to what we're doing now, and that's okay. In these cases, there's no benefit to us holding on to these items from the past. Moving on to DIY projects or home decor. If you have a lot of excess decorations, consider taking them out and sorting them by season or by whichever holiday they represent. If you've got duplicates of these different pieces of decor, consider decluttering your least favorite version to help each individual piece have more impact. If you have 5 decorations that are all very similar, rather than keeping all 5, maybe you'd be able to really celebrate each piece more by keeping 3 of them, for instance. Any decorations that you choose to keep, make sure that they bring you joy, that they serve a purpose, and that they have a certain place where they belong. So we don't have any homeless clutter that's not getting put out and not bringing value to you. If you find any decorations for a certain season that you're not using, get rid of them. Likewise, you might have some unfinished projects laying around that you haven't gotten to yet. If this is the case, when are you going to get to that project and why haven't you gotten there yet? Deep down, you may know whether you're actually going to finish the project or not. And if you don't think you will, let's declutter those items and move on, free up that space from the back of your head. You could also give yourself a deadline, schedule when you need to have something done, and if you don't get it done, you have to let it go. And this deadline can also help us be motivated into action, either action to actually complete the project or to realize that you were never going to complete it anyway and you didn't want to, and let it go. In the case of music, whether it's things like CDs, records, different musical instruments, any other different physical music files, reflect about how you listen to music currently, and are any of the types of music that you have obsolete? If you are mostly streaming music, or maybe you even really enjoy a certain music streaming service that gives you an unlimited library, do you really still need all those CDs or records that you have? Likewise, our music tastes often change, so even if you do still listen to physical media such as CDs or records, for instance, Are there some that you don't listen to anymore or that you don't even maybe like anymore? Those could also be sold or donated. Finally, if you have musical instruments that you no longer play from your past, consider selling or donating those as well, especially if you don't plan on playing them in the future. Since musical instruments tend to be a bit on the larger side, being able to let go not only will open up a lot of space in your own home, but also gives someone else who's excited about the instrument a chance to be able to actually learn it and play it. Lastly, let's address cooking and baking. In this case, hopefully your space is already more minimal because of our kitchen lesson previously, but let's say you have a big hobby of baking or cooking different things. Let's take a look at some of these accessories that you use for your cooking and baking needs. And once again, we can follow the 2-pile method, things that you use regularly and love, and things that you don't use, or maybe were like a one-time use and you haven't been using since. Any of your favorite, most loved items, it's easy. Let's keep them and keep getting lots of value out of them. But if you are not using them regularly and don't love using them, let's again reflect about why. What is the reason behind that? Is it because you have better versions or some other item that covers the same purpose? Is it because there is a certain type of cooking or baking that you're not doing anymore that you used to? Is it because the item does not work as well anymore, so it's more frustrating? In any of these questions, if you answered yes, you probably can consider letting go or donating those items. We definitely went through a lot of different types of hobby and entertainment clutter, but if a topic was not covered that is a type of hobby items that you have, definitely go back to those general principles. I wish you luck, keep up the great work, and I'll see you in the next lesson.